It's Tuesday. That means it's time for another top 10 video. This week, we're going to be doing my top 10 level 3 spells for 5th edition. And honestly, we're doing that one because I already wrote that out a long time ago and I didn't have to think of something new. So if you want to see what my top 3 D&D 5e spells are, stay tuned. So a little bit of rules up front here. The only thing that matters is it's a 3rd level spell, and it is not from Unearthed Arcana. So this includes all published works. We're going to go with every level 3 spell all the way up to and including Explorer's Guide to Wildbound. So any spell, as long as it's 3rd level and it's not homebrew or an Unearthed Arcana spell. Number 10. Number 10 is Pulse Wave. This is a brand new spell. That's probably also why it's towards the bottom of this list, because it's new, and I haven't really had a great chance to use it. I have used it in one game, and it was extremely effective, and I like it because it feels like you're a Jedi. So this is a 3rd level spell. It's a 30-foot cone, which is not a small area when you actually look at like a grid, how a cone works. But you unleash a 30-foot cone of force, and you can either push or pull creatures and objects within that cone. Each creature in the cone must make a con save. If they fail, they're going to take 6d6 force damage and are either pulled 15 feet towards you or pushed 15 feet away from you. In addition, unsecured objects that are completely within the cone are pushed or pulled 15 feet as well. So I like this because it obviously can do damage in a large area. It can do a great amount of crowd control by pulling enemies to you or potentially pushing them off a cliff or into a wall or something. But you could also use it to push objects. So if you're chasing someone, let's say, you could use this to push objects away so people can't get it. You could pull objects towards you, almost like it's like a faster version of Mage Hand with potential damage to people as well. And when you upcast it out of higher level slots, the d6s of force damage increase by 1, as does the push-pull distance goes up by 5 feet. I thought that's pretty cool. The only downside is it's Graviturgy, Chronergy, so you need to be able to have access to it, and your DM needs to allow it for you to be able to use it. Number 9. Number 9 is Sending. I'm sure most of you know what this is, but it's a 1-action spell, and essentially what it does is you send a short message of 25 words or less to a creature with which you are familiar. They hear the message in their mind, recognize you as the sender if they know you, and can immediately make an answer. It enables creatures with intelligence scores of at least 1 to understand the meaning of your message. You can send it across any distance and even to other planes of existence, but if they're on a different plane, there's a 5% chance that it doesn't arrive. So even across planes, it's only a 5% chance of it not working, which is still like ridiculously low considering it's interplanar. It's a very, very useful spell. I'm sure everybody in some case has been able to use this. I like that it's Bard, Cleric, and Wizard. It covers a large majority. I feel like more often than not, though, it's always Clerics that seem to be casting Sending, not Wizards, which is weird to me. I don't know why, but I always see the Clerics doing the casting. But yeah, it's a super useful spell. My only question is whoever created this spell, not necessarily the designer, but like the in-universe wizard who made it, why did they pick 25 words as the limit? I'm curious if there was some sort of wizardly study done or clerical divine study done. It's like 25 words is the optimal amount of words to use when you're sending a long-distance message. Number 8. Number 8 is Galder's Tower. I picked this one because this was, again, a newer one that not a lot of people know about because it was only contained originally in the adventure Lost Laboratory of Qualish. So if you don't know that adventure or have it or use D&D Beyond potentially, you would never know that this spell exists. So it is a 24-hour duration cast time, 10 minutes 24-hour duration, 10-minute cast time. And basically, you conjure a 2-story tower made out of stone, wood, or similar material. It could be round or square in shape. Each level is 10 feet high and is an area of 100 square feet. Access between levels consists of a simple ladder and hatch, and each level takes one of the following forms chosen by you when you cast it. A bedroom with bed, chairs, chest, and magical fireplace. A study with desk, books, shelves, parchment, ink, and ink pens, a dining space with table, chairs, magical fireplace containers, and cooking utensils, a lounge with couches, armchairs, side tables, and footstools, a washroom with toilets, washtub, a magical brazier, and sauna benches, an observatory with a telescope and maps of the night sky, or an unfinished empty room. The interior of the tower is warm and dry, regardless of conditions outside. Any member or any equipment or furnishings conjured within this space dissipate if the smoke into smoke if removed from it. At the end of the spell's duration, all creatures and objects within the tower that were created by the spell appear safely outside on the ground, and all traces of the tower and its furnishings disappear. You can cast this spell again while it is active to maintain the tower's existence for another 24 hours. You create a permanent tower by casting this spell in the same location and with the same configuration every day for 1 year. So you can make a permanent tower out of it. And if you upcast it, you can have one additional story for each slot beyond third. There is no expensive material component. And I guess Galder was just a fancier Leomund. He enjoyed more finer things rather than just a dome that people can't. I mean, the dome has its, Leomund's Tiny Hut has its benefits in that things can't come in and out and you can bar people from it. This is just a tower, so as far as I can tell, people can just come inside, but it's got furnishings, and it's a nice kind of step above Leomund's Tiny Hut in comfort without actually being Mordenkainen's magnificent mansion. Number 7. Number 7 is Catnap, and I think I just really like the concept of this spell. I've never actually taken it or been able to use it in a game, but I think it could be really, really powerful, and it definitely has its uses in certain groups. So what Catnap is it takes an action to cast, and it lasts for 10 minutes. And what happens is basically you pick 3 creatures, they have to be willing, they fall unconscious for the spell's duration. The spell ends on the target early if they take damage or someone uses an action to wake them up, but if they remain unconscious for that full 10 minutes, they get the benefit of a short rest, which is crazy because not only does that mean you can get short rest healing in 10 minutes, but classes that get resources back on a short rest can get them back in 10 minutes as opposed to an hour. So what that means is Fighter's going to get Action Surge, Second Wind, and possibly Battlemaster Fight Dice, all that kind of martial dice back. Monks are going to get all their key points back. Warlocks are going to get their spell slots back. There are a bunch of different options for you. It's pretty useful. And then if you cast it out of a 4th level slot or higher, you can add additional creatures. So in theory, you could pick yourself and knock yourself out. And it is attainable by bards, sorcerers, and wizards. I think it makes more sense for a bard or a wizard to take it just because they're going to have more spell slot options. But I really like it. I think it could be very useful, again, if you're like the wizard in the party of a monk, fighter, and warlock. You could be a hero and save the day by giving them a 10-minute short rest. Number 6. Number 6 is Crusader's Mantle. And I think this is, again, another spell that I just really like because I typically play a lot of paladins, and for the most part, it's only accessible by paladins, although War Domain clerics do get it as a domain spell. It is a 1-action spell. It's concentration for up to a minute. You're a paladin, right? So auras are kind of your shtick. So this makes a 30-foot aura around you. And in all friendly creatures, until the spell ends, the aura moves with you. But while in the area, each non-hostile creature in the area, including you, deals an extra d4 radiant damage when it hits with a weapon attack. So that's all of your allies potentially, and you can obviously significantly bump out the damage if you plan this correctly. So if you as the paladin cast this, and then someone conjures enemies, right, or conjures allies, whether it's a conjure animals, conjure face spirits, and animate objects, whatever, if you are able to improve the amount of combatants, allies in the fight within 30 feet of you, they're all going to add a d4 to that damage. So something that might not do a ton of damage up front is kind of weak. Take that and then tack on another d4 of radiant damage, which is one of the least resisted types of damage in the game. And reminder that this is a die roll, so when you crit, you could potentially go from 1d4 to 2d4 if you crit while in this aura. So there are a lot of cool ways to play with this. My only issue with it is it's an action, and I think that's probably by design, but was Crusader's Mantle a bonus action spell, this would be significantly higher on the list, because the amount of damage output you could get for one bonus action is pretty powerful. And again, it's on a paladin, so you're probably, at the point you have this spell, you're already going to be adding charisma modifier to saving throws, so that should improve your Constitution saving throw ability to maintain the spell. Number 5. Number 5 is Fireball. I don't think I really need to explain why Fireball is on this list. It's iconic, it's classic, and it's one of the most damage output spells that you can get bang for your buck wise for a level 3 spell. It's a 20-foot radius sphere, which I don't know if you've actually taken the time to map out what a 20-foot radius sphere actually looks like on the battle map, or even crazier, measure out a 20-foot radius sphere in real life to give you an idea of how big an area that is, but it is massive, and it's going to deal to any creature or object within that space 8d6 fire damage. It spreads around corners, and it ignites flammable objects that aren't being worn or carried. Something else I think that often gets overlooked is, like, a fireball in a forest sounds like a good idea, but you just set all those trees on fire. Or a fireball in a dungeon maybe just burnt up a whole bunch of books or bookshelves and furniture. Things to consider when you're casting it, but Fireball is Fireball, right? I don't really need to explain it. Number 4. So number 4 is Haste. I feel like this is kind of right up there with the other ones. I don't really think that super needs explanation because it's so useful, but it's on this list because it gives you so much utility. And the fact that it can be cast on either yourself or an ally makes it that much stronger. So for one action, for concentration up to a minute, someone out within 30 feet of you, which is something else. I always feel like I want Haste to be a touch spell, but it's actually out to 30 feet. You choose a willing creature. During that time period, they have double movement speed, a +2 bonus to their AC, advantage on dexterity saving throws, and they get an extra action on their turn. It's one action, though, when it is limited. You can do one attack, even if you do have extra attack. For one weapon attack only. The dash action, the disengage action, the hide action, or the use an object action. So one thing that I feel like a lot of people flub is it does not allow you to cast a spell. It lets you do, and when you attack, it's only one single weapon attack. Not like if you have extra attack, it's not like an action surge where it's another action. And then the other part that I think a lot of people forget about is when it ends, the target can't move or take actions until after its next turn as a wave of lethargy sweeps over them. You're losing a turn when it ends because your body was moving so fast, your now body is catching up to that, so you're slowing down. Other things to consider is it's usable by Sorcerer, Wizard, and Artificer, but obviously you can see some other people get it, like Grassland Druid, Oath of Vengeance Paladin, and the new Oath of Heroism Paladin. Excuse me, I'm going to sneeze here. But sorcerers can twin spell Haste to give it to 2 people for 1 concentration. I'm also playing a Blade Singer at the moment, and considering I can Blade Song for a bonus action, Haste for an action, and then still have my extra action to make an attack, I really found a lot of use for this because it makes me nigh unhittable at this point, and combo that with Shield, and it's super great. But Haste, you'll always find a use for it because it has the benefit of, even if you just need to get away or outrun someone, the double movement speed could be super useful regardless of all the other combat utility that it has as well. Number 3. Number 3 is what I like to call the bane of dungeon masters everywhere, and that is Counterspell. It's actually very useful in this edition. There were funky rules in the past about how it worked, but I think this is probably the cleanest wording of all counterspells, albeit one caveat that I'll get to. So it's a reactionary spell, which there are very few of those in the first place, but it lets you, which you take when you see a creature within 60 feet of you casting a spell. You attempt to interrupt a creature in the process of casting a spell. If the creature is casting a spell of 3rd level or lower, its spell fails and has no effect. If it's casting a spell of 4th level or higher, make an ability check using your spellcasting ability modifier. The DC equals 10 plus the spell's level. On a success, the spell fails and has no effect. So it's nice because it'll auto-counter a 3rd level or lower spell. It still has a potential to counter an even higher level spell. And if you choose to cast it at a higher level slot, it does allow you to counterspell things like if you cast it at a 4th level, then 4th level and lower spells are countered. 5th level, and lower are countered. You get the point. It is only Sorcerer, Warlock, Wizard, and then obviously there are two different, the Oath of Redemption Paladin, and then the UA Oath of Watcher Paladin get it. I do still feel like it's funky that Bard doesn't have it, because I think Bard gets, well, like Bard, Cleric, and Druid all get Dispel Magic, but I feel like it makes sense to me to have Bard have Counterspell as a spell on their list. I don't know why they don't have it, it just feels weird to me. Maybe I'm not the only one. Sound off in bards, sound off in the comments below, because it seems bad if you're not a lore bard to take one of your 10th level magical secrets to take Counterspell. But I don't know, I really like it. The only thing that's kind of funky about it is the idea of counterspelling a counterspell, which I've seen make massive issues between, live stream games, but also in my own personal life. I'm going to cast Fireball. You're going to counterspell me with a reactionary spell, and then I see, in theory, my reaction to you casting a counterspell, I can reaction counterspell your counterspell. Which, as far as I can tell, and I don't think it's ever been officially ruled on, that can't be done. I'm casting one spell, unless that's the difference, right? I'm casting a spell as an action, you are counterspelling me as a reaction, and I can't cast another spell, but I might still be able to. I'm a little confused on it. I don't know. Let me know in the comments down below. I'm sure you have thoughts on it. But also, if you have multiple arcane casters in a party or in an enemy party, it can get really annoying with the counterspell, the counterspell, the counterspell. But other than that, it is still super useful. And if one person can have it in a party, you're more often than not going to find a time where it's ultimately going to save things, especially if the enemy doesn't have counterspell. I stand corrected. I went and checked out the Sage advice to find out. Take a look at this. Can you use a reaction spell on your turn? You sure can. This is the official ruling from the creators of the game. Answer everybody's questions right now. The official ruling, the document released by Wizards of the Coast that spells this out. You sure can. Here's a common way for it to happen. Cornelius the Wizard is casting Fireball on his turn. His foe casts Counterspell on him. Cornelius also has Counterspell prepared, so he uses reaction to cast it and break his foe's Counterspell before it can stop his Fireball. So there, it does work. You can Counterspell, problem solved. Number 2. Number 2 is Mass Healing Word. This is a bonus action spell that you can cast out to a range of 60 feet, and it heals up to 6 creatures of your choice. 1d4 plus your spellcasting ability modifier has no effect on undead or constructs. It is clerics automatically order domain as a prepared spell, as a domain spell rather, and the alchemist. I believe this was in the Unearthed Arcana class features where they gave this, I think, to druids possibly, and maybe bards. Either way, it's interesting that it is only available to Cleric when other classes do have access to Mass Cure Wounds, the harder, stronger version of this, I guess you could say, whereas Clerics are the only one who have access to this Mass Healing Word, which is a bonus action. But I really like this spell. Again, perhaps it's a little bit of a bias, but I was in a fight one time in a game as a bard, and I took Mass Healing Word as a magical secret on purpose. And we won the fight because I happened to be the only one left conscious, and I used the Mass Healing Word to heal the entire party, getting everybody back in the fight, which kept us alive. So that was really cool, and I have a great memory of it, which is why the spell is so high on my list. Again, obviously, if you happen to be a life cleric, this can do even more, right? Because a life cleric healing, you'll get 2 plus the spell's level, so it'll be a d4 plus your wisdom mod plus 5 on top of that. So this could be a significantly boosted heal, which actually that bard in my story was a multi-class bard cleric, which happened to do just that. And again, if you cast it at a 4th level or higher, you're going to add d4s to the healing. Number 1. Before I give you number 1, I did want to go over a couple honorable mentions here. I put Fireball on here, so I feel like that eliminates Lightning Bolt because they're kind of similar, although I still feel like Fireball is better and more useful because it covers a larger area. I didn't put Leomund's Tiny Hut on here, although I do recognize that Leomund's Tiny Hut is super useful. I made my point with Galder's Tower. mostly because it's a newer spell, and I like that. Another one I also thought about putting on here was Conjure Animals. Conjure Animals can be ridiculously broken depending on how your DM allows you to do it. But if you technically read it, you choose Fey Spirits and you choose the challenge rating. And I believe the interpretation is the DM picks what creature it turns into. In every game I've ever played, the DM has allowed the Conjure Animals spell that the caster gets to pick what the animal is. I believe, though, it's supposed to be I want to summon 8 challenge rating 1/4 creatures, and then the DM tells you what they show up as. I think that's how it's supposed to work per the wording, but that's why that's not on here, because there is that funkiness about it. But anyway, so number one, surprising no one, I'm sure, is, of course, Spirit Guardians. In my opinion, the best spell in the game, or it's right up there with Guidance for one of the best spells in the game. Again, it is a cleric spell, so clerics do have some of the best spells out there, in my opinion. Auto-prepared for the war domain, and in my opinion, one of the only reasons to take Oath of the Crown is to be a paladin with Spirit Guardians, which makes you even more deadly because you're going to be smiting people with Spirit Guardians up. So it is one action, is a concentration duration for 10 minutes, which is also really nice, and it's a 15-foot duration surrounding you. If you're good or neutral, they form angelic or fey, your choice. If they're evil, they appear fiendish. In my opinion, and in most games I've played, the DM lets you determine what your Spirit Guardians look like, regardless of fey, fiend, or celestial. When you cast the spell, you designate any number of creatures you can see to be unaffected by it, which is important because it's any number of creatures you can see. So in theory, if you cast Spirit Guardians in this room and your ally is in the next room, you can't see them, so your ally gets hit by your Spirit Guardians, something that's often forgotten by DMs. On the flip side, though, no enemy can sneak up on you in that, because if there's an invisible creature in the room and you cast Spirit Guardians, they are hit by the Spirit Guardians because you couldn't see them to not designate them, if that makes sense. So it works both ways. It'll hit invisible creatures because you can't designate them to not be hit. But if you can't see an ally or your ally's invisible, they will also get hit because you can't see them to make them unaffected by it. In that, an affected creature's speed is halved in the area, and when the creature enters the area for the first time on a turn or starts its turn there, it must make a wisdom saving throw. On a failed save, the creature takes 3d8 radiant damage if you're good or neutral, or 3d8 necrotic damage if you are evil. On a successful save, the creature takes half as much. So not only are you going to be basically doing damage to this person every single turn, as long as you keep this up, you're going to be doing, like, start of their turn, immediately hit with damage. And then don't forget that it's also difficult terrain. And again, a 15-foot radius sphere around you is not a small area for people to have half movement speed. And so it's both of that. Obviously, if they succeed, they still take half damage, so that'd still be damage hitting enemies every single turn in that area. But actually, and it says on a successful save, the damage they take is half. They are still reduced movement speed, regardless of whether or not they take the damage. Because it says on a success, they take half as much damage. It doesn't say they take half as much damage and it's not difficult terrain. So something else to consider. And then again, if you cast it from a 4th level or higher slot, you increase the d8s. So you could, in theory, cast a 5th level Spirit Guardians, and that means on an enemy turn, every time they start their turn, they're going to start with 5d8 damage if they, as they make their Wisdom saving throw. So again, as a cleric and a veteran cleric player, as well as a veteran paladin player, Spirit Guardians can just absolutely destroy an enemy group. I happen to play a very melee-oriented Tempest Cleric in one game where I had, one turn I had Spiritual Weapon, then I had Spirit Guardians, and then I walked in swinging with my Maul, hitting people with my action, dealing extra damage with Divine Strike, bonus action striking with my Spiritual Weapon, and then every turn they were also taking Spirit Guardians damage. I just shredded through enemies. And in any game where I've played, where a player has had access to Spirit Guardians, it drastically alters the combat, because it is just, as long as they can keep that concentration up, they will just continually bang those enemies. And just, even if they roll really garbage, you're still looking, at minimum, at a 3rd level spell, 3 damage every turn. That can knock down people that are popped up With a small healing from an enemy, they can knock them back down. It's radiant damage for the most part, so that's going to shut down healing on certain undead creatures. It's just super powerful. And again, it's also to the point where I know many bards that are lore bards that when they get those magical secrets at level 6, Spirit Guardians is always a choice they make. So anyway, folks, that's my top 10 level 3 spells. Level 3 is a really powerful spell level. There's a lot of really good stuff. So I thought I would do a video on it. I've also done cantrips, overall spells 2 and 3. If you're interested, let me know and I can potentially do the top 10 level 1, level 4, level 5, all the way to 9. If there's even, I think there's at least 10 level 9 spells. But if you're interested, that's something I can do in the future. You all have been giving me a ton of feedback. I have so many videos planned for the next month and a half, at least, with Unearthed Arcana videos, new top 10 videos, fixing videos, videos covering new content that's coming out. I have so much stuff planned, and I'm always looking for more, though. And again, I won't belabor it too much, but there's links in the description for either YouTube membership or Patreon. That is now a thing that you can go, and if you choose to, you can help me decide which videos should come out in which order by participating in member or patron only polls to pick what goes on and then to choose what the next video should be. So if you're interested in any of that, be sure to check that out. And if you haven't subscribed already, I would greatly appreciate it. I'll see you next time.